Well, welcome to Chapter 12, Managing Workforce Flow. Well, here we are. We've made our selection, we've made the offer, and our new employee will start soon. I bet you thought I was going to use that old fishing analogy again. You know, the one where I say that we have hooked the big one, we've landed it on the boat, and now we must make sure that it doesn't flop out of the boat and that we keep it. Well, I'm not going to do that. But we are talking about keeping this new recruit. The text starts with a discussion of onboarding and socialization. You know, in the old days, onboarding was called orientation. And in the old days, orientation was underused and underrated. Changing the name doesn't change the view. And I suspect that orientation or onboarding is still underused and underrated in many organizations, particularly in medium and small companies. So why would organizations give so little credence to onboarding? Are they just cold-hearted businesses with no regard for the welfare of new and existing employees? Well, it's easy to blame such inaction on evil business people, but that's not the real reason. Most medium and small businesses would welcome the ability to spend the time and the money on carefully onboarding new employees. But they can't, and the reason is pretty simple and is one that we've discussed previously. Remember when we stated that recruiting is a part-time endeavor for HR in smaller organizations? Therefore, recruiting is often a longer process in smaller organizations than in larger organizations. Smaller companies take longer to land the big fish. Sorry, I slipped back into that old analogy. Large companies devote full-time resources to the search process. And for small companies, recruiting is critical because it is often about filling open positions with only one or a few incumbents. If a small organization has only one or two engineers and one engineer leaves the organization, a lot of work will not get done. Large organizations may have several engineers, so the work from an open position can be spread over the remaining engineers. There may be one left to split the workload in smaller organizations. So when the recruiting process finally finds an acceptable candidate, and that candidate accepts the offer, it's time to get to work. No time for orientation. Now, I don't particularly like that because I'm a big proponent of onboarding. But it's a reality. Customers, investors, and vendors won't accept the assurance that we will produce again as soon as our new engineer feels comfortable in the job. And accepting the fact that HR department is a single individual or just a few people in smaller organizations, spending a lot of time recruiting critical, time-sensitive positions means that other HR work doesn't get done. Consequently, with a backload of HR work to be done, HR doesn't have the time to develop and participate in a fancy onboarding process. Now, I'm not implying that no orientation takes place, but it is often rudimentary. That said, at least part of orientation is much easier today. In the past, physical presence was required for orientation and onboarding activities. Now, at least, some of the orientation process can be accomplished via the internet and can be accomplished prior to employment start date. The authors cover this in their discussion of onboarding technology. Some of the socialization process can be enhanced through use of company website or other resources, although it doesn't replace the real life or personal interaction within the organization. Said another way, the company espoused values and culture can be stated on the website, but may not be the actual culture and values in practice. But personal interaction with the organization's management and employees will distinguish between actual and espoused real organization cultures and values. Pay particular attention to the socialization choices in the text for a good guide to various programs that can be developed. Effective onboarding programs enhance productivity by making employees comfortable in the work environment and promotes teamwork within the organization. In essence, onboarding ensures that new employees become acclimated quicker, thereby becoming productive quicker. Socialization also promotes the retention of employees. Once an employee feels part of the team and perceives they are productive, they are less inclined to seek other employment. Also understand that although onboarding processes may include group programs, onboarding is a very individual process. Orienting a new employee from another country can be much more complex than onboarding a local employee. Onboarding someone to a new industry, for example, an accountant experienced in the textile industry, but no experience in accounting processes in the medical field, may be more complex. And onboarding someone new to the work world will be vastly different than someone who has spent 20 years of work experience. So successful onboarding depends as much on the new employee's background as on the organization's onboarding process. It is likely that the established process will need to be modified somewhat to fit the new employee. Effective onboarding improves retention and suppresses turnover. We've said that before. In their discussion, the authors indicate that zero turnover is not necessarily good. They emphasize optimal turnover rate as the rate, quote, that produces the highest long-term levels of productivity and business improvement, end quote. In other words, some turnover is good and expected. So acceptable turnover is defined by the market and the business. Also, acceptable turnover is defined by the type of turnover or the types of occupations involved in the turnover rate. I've used engineers as an example before, and it holds here too. Very low turnover and experienced engineers may be essential for market and business success, but the organization may be able to sustain success with higher turnover rates in hourly employees or non-professional employees. So when analyzing turnover, one should look at the positions and departments as well as the overall turnover rate. But it should be pointed out that turnover is not a collection of random events. As discussed in the text, management can impact turnover. Management practices and policies can suppress turnover or promote turnover in specific areas of the organization. And management should always suppress turnover of strong performers and promote turnover of non-productive or poor performers. In one large organization, I developed a performance appraisal system that was amazingly simple. Employees were rated as A, B, or C. A performers were highly rated, and we devoted much money and effort in developmental programs and career planning. Losing these employees was considered a major loss to the organization. B performers were effective or average. They were valuable, and we didn't particularly want to lose them, but if they did leave, we would endeavor to replace them with an A performer. And C performers were marginal or unsatisfactory. We didn't care if they left, and given the same performance in the next yearly evaluation, we would probably terminate their employment. An appraisal rating was communicated to each employee through frank and honest discussions. C performers were given a chance to improve their performance, and more frequent reviews were conducted so that they always knew their status. In the event of a business-generated layoff, C performers would be released first. Our goals were to ensure performance-related information was communicated honestly to all employees and to exert some control, at least influence, over turnover, and to ensure high performers were receiving appropriate development to accept additional responsibility in the future. I should also point out that the criteria for evaluation of performance was clearly specified, and all managers received extensive training on the performance process, and particularly performance appraisals. You see, what really matters is the employer's or management perception of an individual's performance. It is inevitable that some employees view their performance and contribution differently from the management view. An employee may believe that they are performing much better than management's view, or they may believe that they are not performing as well as management's view. All employees should know where they stand. All employees should know where they are valued. Reasons for this disparity may include poor communications of job responsibilities, dishonest prior performance appraisals by management, or misunderstanding the requirements of the job. But the disparity must be addressed, and employees must understand where their performance stands related to management expectations. The second reason I find is most common. Managers are often uncomfortable in performance discussions with employees. They sometimes tell employees that they are doing fine or have had a very good year or are top performers when they are merely effective. In other words, managers may not truthfully communicate performance in order to dispel the discomfort or to not hurt the employee's feelings. Unfortunately, falsely defining performance will ultimately hurt the employee. I have seen this scenario play out in organizations over and over. I'll repeat, all employees should know where they stand. All employees should always know where they stand honestly. One day, a middle-level manager came into my office very upset. His evaluation was a B performer. He was good. He was effective and valued, but he was not a top performer. He was upset because he was previously told that he was one of the top 10 managers in the company to become an executive. He was told that he was on the top 10 list in the organization. After listening intently, I explained two basic facts. First, the organization didn't have a top 10 list, and second, if the company did have one, he would not be on it. I then reviewed his record and explained precisely why he was evaluated as a B performer instead of an A performer. I further explained what he could do to become an A performer. I explained the developmental resources available and told him the company would gladly invest in him if he wanted to take advantage of the resources available. I also commented to him that he would always know where he stood henceforth. As you may guess, the discussion was long and painful. But when he left, he indicated that for once someone in management was honest with his career. He lamented the fact that he had wasted over 10 years with the company thinking that he had a positive career path. He had passed up offers from other companies for better positions on the promise of an executive position in management. After he left my office, I then had an equally intense and direct discussion with his boss, who was an executive. I should also point out that the executive, his boss, was rated as a C performer himself and left the company a few months after that discussion, and he left at the company's request. I tell this story for one specific reason. Being honest with employees can be painful, but being dishonest is unethical. Turnover can only be managed through honest evaluation and communication. Bad employees should be told that they are bad. Effective and valued employees should be told that they are valued, but not top performers. And top performers should know the company values their performance as high. Honesty builds trust, and employees who trust management are less likely to seek employment elsewhere. Bottom line is you don't have to spend a lot of money on fancy programs and activities to manage turnover. You merely have to be honest, and honesty is free. And all the fancy programs and activities in the world won't improve turnover if employees don't trust management. Now, the authors discuss the role of management in turnover and improving management skills. Please study this section of the chapter. It's good stuff there. The authors also delve into layoffs and downsizing near the end of the chapter. I regret that I've had more experience with downsizing in several different organizations than I would like. The usual level of layoffs and downsizing is that due to business reasons, the number of employees must be decreased. and that situation and reality is generally accepted by employees and management as a necessary part of business. In a realistic scenario, employees know something is amiss. They know business is not good, and they know that layoffs are likely in the future. They don't know when or who will be affected. Employees are very nervous. Management also knows that things are not great and a decrease is in the future. Management may also know when and who will be affected. But it is considered prudent to keep that knowledge a secret. It is believed that if employees know their employment may be terminated soon, they will perform below standard or even engage in workplace sabotage. Therefore, one day, unannounced, individual employees are called to the office and told they are no longer employed and must leave the premises. Surprise! Now, I understand that at times some companies' secrecy is necessary, but is it always such? I worked for a company that enjoyed a very good relationship between management and employees. There was a lot of trust. Management became aware of a business situation that was not currently impactful, but in 6 months or more would likely result in some significant downsizing. To meet this critical problem, management set about restructuring the organization on paper to be implemented when necessary. This activity was top secret. But as we went through the restructuring plans, we were bothered by the thought of surprising everyone with an unannounced layoff. We decided that we must communicate the plans to employees. We understood the risk, but believed we could trust employees to do the right thing. The thought of employees investing in new homes, buying cars, or making other big investments when we knew some would not be employed, and thus secrecy was unacceptable. In addition, we continually told employees, the media, and anyone else who would listen that we had great employees and we were a family. Would a family keep such secrets from the bulk of a family? I doubt it. Did we once trust employees, but now we lost trust? No. We were ashamed. So we told employees that in 6 months there would likely be a major layoff. We communicated the anticipated new organizational structure, and we told employees that we did not know which employees would be affected, but did know what positions may be impacted. We indicated that performance would play a big role in the final list of impacted employees. We pledged to have regular update meetings as the positions and layoff list was developed. We also pledged that no employee would be surprised, but would know well in advance if their employment was impacted. We also asked for employees' help and cooperation, and I'm still amazed at the results. Some employees volunteered for the layoff. As a layoff list was developed and made public, some employees volunteered to take the place of others on the list. They stated the employee on the list needed the job more. They sacrificed for others. Performance stayed at a high level and sabotage was non-existent. The discussion wasn't about how bad management treated people by laying them off. It was about understanding a layoff was necessary and employees were being treated fairly. Long before the layoff was implemented, all affected employees were notified and were able to plan accordingly. We also offered severance pay and job counseling to affected employees. Now, this is probably an exception, but it does demonstrate that honesty and trust can do wonders, even in difficult circumstances. Whenever possible, trust employees and give them a reason to trust management. And more importantly, don't accept the tried and true method of effecting difficult solutions. Action plans and solutions should be based on your workforce, your work environments, and your culture, not on the culture of organizations who have effected difficult solutions before you. Innovation is a sign of strong leadership. Willingness to take risk and find new solutions to old problems is a sign of strong leadership. In terms of layoff, there was obviously a better solution than surprise. Control turnover both by suppressing turnover through honest feedback and promoting turnover by honest evaluation of poor performers. Understanding that some employees are valued more than others in organizations, and understand that employees should always know how they are valued by management. And strong leadership ensures that honest communication. Are you a strong enough leader that you can tell an employee that they are performing poorly? Can you have the discussion I had in my example? If not, start developing your leadership now, or don't go into management. We have enough dishonesty and distrust in management. We need leaders.